Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'd, ayyal ahbab. A question was asked, are Salafis a gang? Because of bullying and so forth that we found in our community from people who claim Salafia. So the first thing I want to mention in addressing such a question is first and foremost, and this is going to be the asl or the foundation of my answer, and that is the scholars mention a very important principle, which is al-ibra bihaqa'iq laysa bimasamiyat. The reality of something is in its substance, not in its claim. So someone can claim Salafia, but they could be a jihadi. Someone could claim Salafia, they could be a takfiri. This is all just to say that someone could portray Salafia, someone could even adhere to Salafia, but they fall into traits of what is known as hizbia, meaning they're to the practice of partisanship, you might say. Some of the traits of hizbia that sometimes either certain Salafis could fall into, or they become pure hizbis. Okay, it just depends on the people to follow it. They have different levels of deviancy and different levels of adherence to the sunnah and different levels of adherence to bid'ah. But some of these negative traits of hizbiyah, first and foremost, that the scholars mention, one of the biggest things is that they make al-wala wal-bara to either their sheikh, their friends, their gang, their clique, their crew, their organization, their website, whatever. It's love and hate. So if you disagree with them, you're automatically a mubtadi'. It doesn't matter what your aqeed is. It doesn't matter what your relationship to the truth is. They are going to make tabdi of you. They're going to declare you a mubtadi'ah, an innovator, or even a disbeliever. So this is a first negative trait of what is referred to as hizbiyah, this partisanship, that they're actually making love and hate based on either individuals, personalities, cell phones, coffee brands, or their clique, their crew, their gang, their whatever, their group of brothers, like as if they're the only Salafis in a certain locality. A second trait is that they prioritize their loyalty to their individual friends and their clique over the haqq. And as we mentioned prior to this, that Imam Malik said, La yuraf al-haqq bi rijal, lakin yuraf al-rijal bil-haqq. We don't know the truth by men, but rather we know men by the truth. So we put men, individuals, institutions, groups of brothers, groups of sisters, cliques, we put that on the scale of what is true Salafiyah, what is truly the call to the Quran and the Sunnah and the understanding of the Sahaba, radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in. Either it goes well with it or it doesn't, okay? So another trait of Hizbiyah is that Hizbis, because of this love and this hate based upon their sometimes innovated principles, sometimes their innovated group and friends and their clique, is that they also will defame and disparage their those people who differ with them. This was a trait of the original Khawarij. The Khawarij used to make takfir of anyone who disagreed with them. So it didn't matter even if this other person was a Khariji and they had the same principles, but if they disagreed with them on an individual or an issue, they made takfir of them. Khalas, haulai kuffar. Those are disbelievers. Likewise, this trait of hizbiyah or partisanship, sometimes people who claim Salafiyah or could be Salafis, but they fall into a mistake. And that's what I'm saying. There's different situations with different individuals, depends on the individual, that they begin to make this love and hate based on their friends and their opinion, their ijtihad, their scholars' fatwa, their followers ruling on a particular other sheikh or other individual, and they make love and hate based on it. Instead of just saying, well, my sheikh holds this of you and I hold this of you. Okay, that's no problem. But when you force that opinion on others, this is where the hizbiyah comes in and why it becomes very dangerous. And so what happens is people become opponents with other Muslims because those people don't agree with their erroneous principles. Now, I want to distinguish something, because if people don't agree with the haqq, you have every right. That is a part of the da'wah to Ahlul Sunnah, to say, hey, this person is innovating in the religion of Islam. This person is a wicked sinner. That's not from Islam. This person is this. And then the rulings of hajr and the rulings of boycotting and all these kind of things could be implemented under those certain circumstances and certain usul and foundation principles. Lastly, I want to say is that the people of of Hizbiyah is they have a tendency to blindly follow their group's methodology. So Hizbis may adhere to specific groups' methodology or teachings without critical examination, even if it contradicts mainstream Islamic understanding, meaning mainstream according to the Quran, the Sunnah, and the Fahm and Salaf. Not mainstream according to, oh, traditionally our cultures worship graves. Traditionally, the Muslim madhabs have said that this was okay. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for what Qala Allah, Qala Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam said. This is imperative for us as Muslims to adhere to the haqq. So what happens is some people have met in America, in the UK especially, probably in France too, and other places, where there's been people associated with themselves with Salafia. Some were Hizbis, and some were actually Salafis who just made a mistake or made many mistakes in this area. Okay, so just because someone falls into mistakes, that la yastalzam hukm alayhim. So meaning someone can fall into kufr and not be a kafir. Someone can fall into Hizbiyah and not be a Hizbi. Okay, they're in danger. They're sinful. They're doing the wrong thing, but doesn't mean that they are fitting this particular trait, and likewise with other types of bid'ah. So it's very important. There's a difference between making a takfir al-ma'ayyan or takfir al-mutlaq, the general takfir and the specific takfir, or tabdi' ma'ayyan or tabdi' mutlaq, the general tabdi' or declaring someone to be an innovator, and the specific as far as a particular individual. And I've talked about this extensively in other videos. So I just want to mention that those are traits that sometimes we find in individuals, and then people begin to classify everyone as that. And for an example of where in the title to me was misleading, but the content was a very good collection, and that was our brother. I forget his name. He is probably doctor now, did his PhD in Qatar, and he did a thing called Cult Traits of the Salafis in the West, or something like this, or something. And so he used the Kalam Ahl al-Ilm, the scholars of Salafia, to show that these are dangerous traits that some Salafis can fall into, or some people can actually become actual Hizbis and fall into. And it's an excellent compilation. I forget the brother's name right now, but we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives us all and guides us all. So it's very important to know that because of your bad experience with some who were actually gangster, we know countless stories. I've seen it, we've heard it, countless narrations of people who behaved unbefitting of a Muslim under the guise of Salafia. But look at how many Muslims do evil things under the guise of Islam. We just had some guy do a terrorist act in the next state next to me. And actually, I was driving through that state yesterday. I drove past, and he tried to kill people, okay? And he said, free Palestine. He has nothing to do with Islam. His evil actions are not substantiated by Islam. His evil, ignorant, foolish conduct is only going to cause more problems for the Muslims in Colorado and elsewhere, and the image of Islam. And he's done nothing for Palestine. The people are dying still. The cause is it's not heightened and enlightened. People don't become more enlightened because, we see that you are. This only strengthens Netanyahu and others' narratives, the enemies of Islam. So it's very important for us to know, Ayyal Ahbab, that if you see negative traits of someone or even a particular groups, I wouldn't make all my judgments of even the Asharis based on particular Asharis. But rather I would look in their books. Rather, I would look at their Rasul, their foundation. Rather, I'd look in their itiqad, their creed. What is their creed? That's how I make my judgments, because I know many Asharis and Deobandis and even Sufis that I got along with great. But what's the problem? We have a different methodology, a different methodological approach in our understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, to accept our good and forgive our evil, protect us from kulli su'a makruh, wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.